Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I'm very excited because I'm starting a new series where I'm going to be rebuilding or reimagining the ancient wonders of the world. Now, if you're not familiar with the ancient wonders of the world, they are the Great Pyramid of Giza, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Temple of Artemis, the Mausoleum of Helicarnassus, which I think I said that right, Colossus of Rhodes, which is another sculpture, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and the thing that we're building today together, which are the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Now, I know there was a trend a while ago where people were saying, oh, this is my Roman Empire, this is the thing that I'm interested, I'm passionate about. I, for some reason, love the ancient wonders of the world. And so that's part of why I'm really excited to be doing this series with you, rebuilding or reimagining them. And I wanted to start with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon today. Some of the ancient wonders of the world still exist, like, of course, the Great Pyramid of Giza is still around today, but a lot of the other ones don't exist anymore, and we don't have a lot of records of. And one of such buildings that doesn't exist anymore and we don't have a lot of records on are the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Now, they were built about 3,000 years ago, and a lot of historians believe that they were destroyed in about 100 AD or 100 CE, Common Era. But there are a couple of theories about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. They're kind of mysterious because they no longer exist anymore, so there's not a lot that we can go off from. The first theory is that it was just a myth, that it didn't actually exist, but it was kind of a fantasy idea of an oasis in the middle of a desert. Now, I'm inclined to not believe in that one because I really don't want to believe in that. I would love to think that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon actually existed, but also because there's other evidence, historical evidence, that some type of structure did exist. Which leads me to the problem with the records about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. A lot of them, so if it was destroyed in 100 CE, a lot of the records about it were written by people 100 or more years later who never actually saw it themselves, who never actually went there themselves, or even were around and alive when it was in existence. So there's some trouble with that in the written record, which is why a lot of people credit the king Nebuchadnezzar II as the creator of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. But I don't think so, because Nebuchadnezzar II was the most famous out of all of the Babylonian dynasty kings. He reigned the longest. And I think if I was an ancient Greek author writing about something that I didn't 100% know about, but I knew it was built by an ancient king of Babylon, I would probably default to the one king that I did know about, or the most popular king, most powerful king. So I think that is part of why he is credited so much with constructing the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. There's also a couple of other problems with the idea that he built it. Although I will first say he is said to have built it for his wife. But one of the big problems is that Nebuchadnezzar was really famous for keeping very detailed records of all of the things he built, all the things he worked on. And they have a complete history of all of his records. And he never once talks about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and I think that's a pretty significant structure. So if he had built it, he probably would have included it in the records. The other problem that I have with it is that, as the title says, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the idea was that they were built in Babylon, which is today south of Baghdad, Iraq. And there are no ruins, there are no structures that hint towards Hanging Gardens being there. And so all of this combined, I don't really think that Nebuchadnezzar built it, and I don't think he built it in Babylon. And I don't think they necessarily existed in Babylon, but I'm more inclined to believe our third and final theory, which is that it was built by Sennacherib, who was a king about 100 years before Nebuchadnezzar II. And Sennacherib's capital was in Nineveh, which is in northern Iraq today, which is quite a ways off from Babylon, which might be part of the reason why we've never found the Hanging Gardens of Babylon in Babylon, if they were actually built in Nineveh. And there are also more historical records that suggest that Sennacherib built it in Nineveh than there are documents that say Nebuchadnezzar II built it in Babylon. And the first document is there's a prism column with cuneiform writing. Cuneiform writing is like an ancient form of writing that was used during this time. And on this prism column, Sennacherib's palace and beautiful gardens are described in detail. And I don't think it's a far leap to say that those gardens that are described are the gardens of, or are the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And the other document that suggests that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon belonged to Sennacherib is that there is a tablet called the Garden Relief, which is in the British Museum today, that showcases a large garden in a desert that is already associated with Sennacherib and Nineveh. Also in the historical record, we know that Sennacherib had the technology and the means to be able to build the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So, of course, the big problem with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is water. How did they get that much water out into the middle of the desert to be able to grow these kinds of gardens? And also, it was believed that it was a very large structure. How do they move the water throughout the structure? And really, there are two ways. So I think in school we all learned about aqueducts and their association with the Roman Empire, but there is actually evidence of aqueducts that are still standing that are from about 500 years before the Romans in and around Nineveh. And these aqueducts are all signed by Sennacherib. I guess he was very proud of his work because his name is all over all of them. And some of them are quite large. Some of the aqueducts are as big as the Panama Canal in places. And so we know that he had the means to transport large quantities of water across his empire. All right, so to jump into the video a little bit here, I know I skipped ahead some of those building stages, but it was, as you'll see, very tricky to get the internal structure that I wanted. But that building off to the right that I built first, that is my interpretation of an aqueduct. Now, of course, real aqueducts, the water runs along the arches and kind of that trough that is above. But this is The Sims. There's only so much we can do, and we're just kind of having fun. So I made it run perpendicular underneath my arches. I have also been using throughout this build, I swear to you, the best stones in the game are from the Journey to Batu kit, which I know is a bit of a meme kit or a joke kit in the Sims community, but it really has nice, if not the best, stone textures for flooring. I also have been using the lanterns from the Journey to Batu kit because I really like the light fixtures in that kit, and I think they... Of course, nothing is truly time appropriate for this, but they look kind of time appropriate to my imagination. So I've been using stuff from that kit. Then, of course, the other kit that I'm primarily using throughout this build and what I imagine I'll be using throughout most of my Rebuilding the Ancient Wonders of the World series is the Jungle Adventure kit. Okay, and I know that earlier I somewhat discredited the written records from the ancient Greeks about this structure, but I will say from their descriptions, they said that the ancient gardens of Babylon had tiers to it, like a theater, like an ancient Greek theater with a lake at the bottom. So in my mind, I made kind of like a step pyramid with different tiers on it. And there is a lake in the middle with another water feature I will explain when we get a better view of it. But otherwise, from the garden relief tablet and from the prism column with the cuneiform writing, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are described as having fragrant plants from across the empire, fruit trees, cotton plants, trees, and other plants suspended in arches. I didn't know how to do that in this, so I didn't quite do that. But I did feature trees throughout the different levels and themed almost the different levels with different kinds of plants. And I tried to tie those themes as best as I could into those little reliefs that I added from the Jungle Adventure kit on each of the tiers. So on the second tier there, I believe that was called the tree relief. And so that's the tier that I put most of the trees on. Okay, and I'm going to jump into a true speed build here in just a minute. I just want to comment that the video will have a couple of jumps in it. The original footage of this is probably 3.5 hours long, so I'm cutting out a lot of the duplicates. Like if you see me place a couple of trees on one side of the building, know that I'm going to be placing those trees on the other side of the building. Oh, I'm also right here, I'm going to be creating like a little moat to go out around it that I will decorate as well, but I think I cut the decorating part of it. But anyways, please enjoy the speed build for a little bit. I'll jump in later to share some more history and information about the build.
Alrighty, so hopping back into the build here, I know earlier I mentioned that there were two ways that they were able to get water to this building and throughout this building to have this sort of oasis in the middle of the desert. And the second technology that was used, you can kind of get a hint of it in the middle here, is they had this thing that was kind of like an Archimedes screw. Now, an Archimedes screw is the first version of a water pump. It basically had, think of a screw and all of the ridges that run up along it and a pipe that is perfectly fit to the width of that screw, and as the screw spins, the water is pulled up and up and up. Now we call it an Archimedes screw because it was believed to be invented by Archimedes, but again, there is historical evidence that here at the Gardens of Babylon, an Archimedes screw was used about 400 years before Archimedes lived. So that was a pretty big invention to be discovered a lot earlier. Now in The Sims, I didn't know how to build an Archimedes screw. Please forgive me, I did not know how to make that happen. But I thought of how there's supposed to be this lake at the bottom of the Hanging Garden, so I built that big water area, and then in the center, instead of a screw per se, I built this cube that runs up every single level of it, and I put in those water emitters that spout water up, and the idea is that when you're in live mode, it's going to look like water is being carried up through this column in the middle of the build. And so that was kind of my interpretation of it. And I think you just saw me build those stairs off to the side. My goodness, it took me quite a while to figure out how to get the stairs all the way up each of the levels. There were a couple of building restrictions in The Sims that I ran into. For example, I couldn't, on this first level, I couldn't make that wall by the water go all the way across because that would cut out all of the internal water. So I had to leave it technically open and technically not a room. And then the stairs go on up each of the levels. And I'm just showing you a little bit of the landscaping that I'm doing on the inside. This I will be replicating more on the outside, where right now I just have a couple of trees spread out. Now, it was hard to pick plants for this build because there isn't a Middle Eastern inspired pack, so there isn't Middle Eastern inspired plants to use in the game. So I used a mix of Jungle Adventure and some of the base game ones. Those really large flowers are base game, I believe. And then a couple of palm trees. I don't know if that makes sense in this area of the world, but that's what we have to use, and I think it works out. I think it looks right. And now I'm going to be showing you mostly just this level of putting plants and decorating, because most of the levels are pretty similar. But here I just put a couple of bushes around the walls. Those bushes are actually from the Cottage Living pack, and they're my favorite to use in building in general. I really would recommend that pack for anyone who's looking to get started. I also, on the wall there, I used, what pack was that from? I think that's the For Rent pack, that kind of medallion that's on the wall. Oh, and now we've jumped up to the second floor, and I was thinking about what type of lot this was going to be, and I tested out a couple of different ones to see what they would require. And I decided to go with the national park because they required the least amount of modern amenities. And I'm not disturbed by the idea of having a couple of benches and a picnic area in this space. Probably not true to history, but it seems more true to history than having the other things like a wedding arch and stuff in here. So I just put all of the national park required items in this level of the build. And I think later on, I did put maybe a chess table up at the top or second to top level and a couple of other activities throughout so that your Sims have something to do while they come here. I think in just a second, we're going to dive into the live mode tour. All right, and here is the build in live mode, and I'm taking my sim Izamiya along. She's the local archaeologist here. And wow, I love the way the water features look. This is the build. And let's go down inside. So this is the ground floor. Yeah, I don't love that you can see all of those little spouts for the screw. What is it called? Archimedes screw in the middle, but I think it is what it is. And I love the way that these plantings turn out, where they're kind of tropical. And if we can go up a little bit, this is our, I guess, eating area, the eating floor here. And the third floor, I think I just did some plants. I did put some plants around the edges to hide where these plants on the walls were clipping up through the floor a little bit, but I think oh, you can see one right there. Oop, but we don't. We keep spinning and we don't see that anymore. But I think it looks cool. Yeah, I like that water feature a lot. And down on the inside, I used the dance floors from the Get Together, I believe, pack. The clear dance floors to make it look like this goes all the way down through. And this is the second to top level where I added a couple of activities. This is where you can shape the bonsai and play some chess. And at the very top, I made this kind of green space oasis with this lovely fountain here. Oh, don't look at the modern homes. Oh, that's another modern home. Okay. And yeah, so this is the build. Oh, I can't forget our lovely building over here. And I'm going to add this to the gallery so that you guys can have it. Let me just save it. Oh, that's not what I want it called. Hanging gardens. I don't think Of Babylon's going to fit, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Save lot, hanging gardens. That picture is okay. I feel like the gallery pictures always do me dirty. That's a better angle of it. Why can't that be the first picture? Anyways. And my gallery tag is the same as my YouTube channel, Sarahtology. I don't know what hashtags to put in here. So, Sarahtology, history, national park, garden. Oh, ancient wonder. Obviously. So in for the oddly specific search, hanging gardens of Babylon. I'm sure that one will get a lot of hits. Hanging garden, Sarahtology, history, national park, garden, ancient wonder, hanging gardens of Babylon. Perfect. And there are no restrooms and no bedrooms. Perfect. And that is uploaded. Thank you guys for sticking through this video and watching today. I shall have another video soon. Bye.